Welcome to the Week in Politics with Michelle Grattan. My name's Nick Klomp. I'm the Deputy Vice-Chancellor here at the University of Canberra. Michelle, a damning administrator's report into Queensland Nickel suggests that Clive Palmer may have acted as a shadow director of the company before hundreds of workers were sacked. How did it all go wrong for Palmer?
Well, Palmer obviously used this enterprise as a cash cow, transferring funds to other parts of his empire, but also a lot of money was siphoned off for his then new Palmer United Party. You'll recall that the spending was absolutely enormous on advertising before the 2013 election, and that really enabled that party to win 3 Senate places. But this has been at the expense of hundreds of workers who are now left without jobs. The enterprise should have been putting aside money when prices were high for times when prices were low, so it had a buffer, but in fact that didn't happen, and therefore there was no buffer. When the bad times came, it just couldn't cope.
So just recently there's a suggestion that the government might put together some sort of rescue package for the workers involved.
That's right. It's doing that now. The government does have a scheme to cover workers' entitlements in situations like this, and that scheme is now kicking in to help these workers. But this means that the taxpayer is going to be forking out tens of millions of dollars to give these workers their entitlements. Now, there'll be action to get this money back from Clive Palmer eventually, but it does mean that the problems of this company have flow-on effects even for the wider taxpaying community.
Is this politically the end for Clive Palmer, do you think?
I think Clive Palmer was coming to the end politically anyway. I don't think he will win the seat of Fairfax, assuming he contests that, and you'd wonder why he would contest his seat again. He now only has 1 senator out of his original 3, 2 defected, and I think he is totally discredited and, of course, possibly could face charges, according to the administrator's report.
Malcolm Turnbull is in China for the first time as Prime Minister. How is he approaching his visit?
He's very much stressing the commercial side of the relationship, the opportunities that China presents. The Chinese economy is undergoing a transition from concentration on exports to a more domestically consumption-centred economy. Australia, of course, is also undergoing a transition from being carried along by the Chinese boom and exporting huge amounts of minerals to China, commodities to China, and now, of course, has to diversify its own economy as the Chinese economy changes. Malcolm Turnbull is emphasising that in this new era, there are complementary relationships, and Australia can plug into this new stage of Chinese enterprise. He's also, of course, going to discuss political issues, but without too much emphasis on the differences. However, he has to make the point, and has already made the point, about the Chinese needing to abide by the rules-based international system.
The global credit rating agency Moody's has hinted that Australia's AAA credit rating may be at risk if the government doesn't adequately address revenue as well as spending in the upcoming May budget. What signals is the government sending about tax increases?
Scott Morrison has been arguing that we don't have a revenue problem, we only have a spending problem in the federal budget. And the assessment by Moody's is really, therefore, very damaging, because it's arguing we have both a revenue and a spending problem, that it will be hard to address budget repair adequately without revenue measures, because spending measures would just have to be too harsh to do the job. And it's also emphasising the escalating debt, and all that adds up to a pretty serious message which does undercut the government, especially the Morrison narrative. Now, Scott Morrison's not moving from his line. He is saying, of course, there will be revenue measures in the budget. Now, some people have taken that as a tax increase, but what he's meaning is that there'll be some tax increases or a decrease in concessions, but that will be used to pay for other tax cuts. So we know, for example, that cigarettes will be more heavily taxed. We know that superannuation concessions will be cut back, but we're also expecting a reduction in company tax. And I would be surprised if the government can get away without doing something, or be modest, or in the future a promise rather than a current actuality on the income tax front.
Parliament returns next week to consider the government's industrial legislation. How is this likely to play out?
I think that what we'll see is that the bill to resurrect the Australian Building and Construction Commission will be defeated. Labor's indicated this week that it won't be delaying the bill. It won't be, in other words, engaging in some tactical play to try to not get it considered. I think both sides of politics now think enough's enough. They're ready for the double dissolution that's been flagged if this legislation is rejected, and there's no sign at this moment of enough crossbenchers being willing to compromise. Now, you can never be absolutely sure with this crossbench, but basically it looks as though, and both sides anticipate, the legislation will go down, will be off to the polls for a July 2 election after it's announced following the budget, and it'll be a very long campaign.
Wow, time will tell. Michelle Grattan, thank you again.
Thanks, Nick.